Hi, I'm Justin Sydnor. I'm an assistant professor here at the Wisconsin School of Business. I want to tell you about some new research I have coming out in the Review of Economics and Statistics with my co-author Nico Lecetera. So in our research, we're looking at a really big question about whether multinational companies can transfer their practices from their home country to foreign countries where they do business abroad. And the title for our paper is, Would You Buy a Honda Made in the US? So the Japanese automakers are really well known for making high quality cars, Toyota and Honda in particular. Now, during the 1980s, both of those companies started to set up production plants here in the United States to make some of their cars here on US soil. Big question at the time was whether they were going to be able to transfer their practices and make that same sort of high quality car that they made back in Japan here in the US. Now fortunately, both Honda and Toyota produce some of their most popular models, in particular the Honda Accord and the Toyota Camry, in plants both in Japan and here in the US. And so that gives us a really nice experiment to test this question. So once we had identified that, we then needed to find a way of measuring the quality of cars over time, and also figuring out which cars had come from Japan and which from the US, because we don't normally have just a badge on the side of the car saying which is which. So to do that, we went and looked at wholesale auto auction data. So these auctions are a place where used car dealers can come and buy used cars for sale on their lot. We had access to a data set of over 360,000 used Hondas and Toyotas sold at these wholesale auctions. Then what we could do is we could look at these cars, and by looking at the VIN number of the car, the first digit of the VIN number actually tells you what country the car was produced in. Then after that, the question is, how do we get to the value of the car? And there what we did is we looked at the prices. And the way to think about this is that the used car dealers who are buying cars at these wholesale auctions are thinking about a lot of things when deciding how much they're willing to pay. So they think about what type of car and the mileage, but they also notice any quality differences they can see in a car. So they notice if the car is rusting, they notice if it's making noises, and any of those things go into the price that they're willing to pay for the car. So what we did is we looked to see whether systematically two cars that were otherwise the same, one built in the US and one built in Japan, whether they systematically had different values at the auctions. Now what we found was that the Japanese assembled cars sold for a little more than the US assembled cars on average. But that difference was very small, only around $50. And in particular, in recent years, cars made more recently here in the US, that difference had basically disappeared. So what that result tells us is that the Japanese actually were successful at transferring their quality production from their home plants in Japan to their new plants here in the US. And that result's important because it tells us that there's nothing inherently wrong with the US manufacturing environment that prevents making very high quality cars. And it also gives us new information about how well-run multinational companies can transfer their practices abroad. So if we go back to that original question from our title, would you buy a Honda made in the US? Well, if you're in the market for one, by all means, the ones made in the US are just as good.